So, how do you create trust online? I mean, real trust, without having to go through a bank or a government or some giant tech company. It turns out that's one of the hardest problems we have ever tried to solve on the internet. And at the very center of it all is one simple but massive challenge: getting thousands of total strangers to agree on something. This is the story of how we're trying to solve that puzzle.
Yeah, this whole thing, it's at the absolute heart of every single blockchain. It's often called the online agreement problem or just the challenge of consensus. It's literally the engine that makes the whole shebang work.
Seriously, just stop and think about this for a second. How on earth can thousands of anonymous computers, scattered all over the globe, agree on a single version of the truth? Especially when any one of them could be lying or actively trying to cheat the system. How do you stop it from just turning into total chaos?
Well, the answer is something called a blockchain consensus protocol. Think of it like the official rule book for the network. It's the set of instructions that lets all of these independent machines actually reach an agreement. It really is the beating heart of a blockchain, making sure everyone is playing the same game by the same rules.
All right, so the first, and let's be honest, the most famous solution to this whole problem was proof of work. This was the genius idea that made Bitcoin possible and, well, kicked off this entire revolution. But to really get why proof of work was so clever, you've got to understand the specific problem it was designed to fix. See, early decentralized systems had this huge vulnerability called a Sybil attack. That's basically where one bad guy could just spin up thousands, even millions of fake accounts, and use that fake majority to completely take over the network.
And this is where proof of work was just absolutely brilliant. It basically said, I don't care who you are, your identity is worthless here. What I care about is your computing power. It forces these computers, the so-called miners, to solve these incredibly difficult cryptographic puzzles. And doing that work costs real money for electricity, for powerful computers, so it becomes crazy expensive, pretty much impossible for one person to create enough powerful identities to cheat the system. You know, the best way to think about it is like a lottery. Every single guess at that puzzle, that's like one lottery ticket. So the more computer power you have, the more tickets you can buy, plain and simple. And that gives you a better shot at winning the right to add the next block of transactions to the chain.
Okay, but this whole brute force approach, this giant global lottery, it came with some massive side effects. Side effects that, honestly, nobody really saw coming. The cost of all this work turned out to be just staggering.
So you gotta ask, what's the catch, right? There's always a catch. What is the real price we pay for securing a network this way, by just burning insane amounts of computational power 24/7 all over the world?
The price is energy, a lot of energy. We're talking about the Bitcoin network alone chewing through almost 73 terawatt hours of electricity every single year. I mean, that number is so big it's hard to even picture. So let's put it this way. That's more power than the entire country of Chile uses in a year. Just wow.
And here's the crazy part. This massive cost leads to another huge problem, and this one is deeply ironic. The very system that was built from the ground up to be decentralized, well, it started to become centralized.
And this chart really shows you what I mean. See, because mining is so dang expensive, regular people can't really compete on their own. So they team up in these huge groups called mining pools. And what happens? Well, just look. A tiny handful of these pools now control the vast majority of the Bitcoin network's power. Kind of defeats the purpose of decentralization, doesn't it?
So these two big problems with proof of work, the insane energy use, and this drift back towards centralization, it sparked this huge race to find a better way, a smarter, more efficient way for everyone to agree. And that's what led to the next generation of consensus protocols.
Okay, so the most popular alternative that came out of this is called proof of stake. And this comparison lays out the core difference really well. Instead of security coming from raw computing power, in proof of stake, it comes from having skin in the game, an economic stake. So forget the lottery analogy. This is much more like being a shareholder in the network.
So how's it work? Well, it's pretty clever, actually. To get a say, you have to lock up some of the network's own currency as collateral. They call this staking. And the more you stake, the higher your chance of being picked to validate the next block. The logic is, if you have a huge financial stake in the system, you're not going to want to mess it up, right? You've got the most to lose if things go wrong. And there's even a popular twist on this called delegated proof of stake. You can think of it like a digital democracy, really. Basically, everybody with tokens gets to vote for a small group of witnesses. These are the folks who actually do the work of validating blocks. And then you have delegates, who kind of manage the big picture rules.
It's a system that's way faster and more efficient, but it really depends on people actually, voting and paying attention.
At the end of the day, this search for the perfect consensus mechanism, it's nowhere near over. In fact, it's one of the hottest, most important areas of research in this whole field right now.
And this quote really hits the nail on the head. Building these systems isn't something you just do on a whim. It's a massive security and engineering challenge that takes incredible discipline. We are, quite literally, trying to engineer trust from the ground up.
So what's the big takeaway here? It's that there's no magic solution, no silver bullet. Every single one of these systems comes with trade-offs. You might give up a little decentralization to get more speed, or you might go for maximum security, but that's going to cost you an energy. It's this giant, evolving puzzle, and right now, there is no single right answer.
And that leaves us with a really huge question, doesn't it? I mean, if money is just becoming code, if our social agreements are becoming code, then the rules we use to agree on that code are, well, they're everything. So the question we all have to think about is, what is the right way for us to agree on the rules?